There is a specific kind of man that life seems to treat harder than everyone else. He's not reckless. He's not lazy. He's not making obvious mistakes. He's actually trying. And the harder he tries, the more resistance he seems to face. People around him drift away. His mind turns on him at the worst moments. Things he's built toward don't arrive when they should. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, he can't quit, even when he wants to. A 2022 longitudinal study tracking men across 15 years found that the periods they later described as formative, where they developed their strongest character and capabilities, coincided almost exactly with their hardest seasons, not their easiest. The men who grew the most weren't the ones with the clearest path. They were the ones who kept moving without one. If any of that sounds familiar, this video was made for you, because what looks like difficulty from the outside might be something else entirely from the inside. Here are 5 signs that you're not falling apart. You're being built differently. Sign number 1. Resistance arrives the moment you commit. You decided to change direction. You committed to something that mattered, and almost immediately, everything pushed back. That's not a coincidence. When a person commits to a goal aligned with their deeper values, the nervous system activates what researchers call challenge response, heightened focus, increased cognitive load. Your brain doesn't treat the pursuit of meaning the same way it treats comfort. It treats it like a battle. Stanford psychologist Kelly McGonigal found that people who commit to meaningful goals experience a process called stress inoculation, where repeated exposure to resistance reprograms the nervous system to perform better under pressure over time. The men who faced the most resistance and stayed in it didn't just survive, they became harder to stop than they were before the resistance arrived. The moment David was anointed, not when he sat on the throne, but the moment he was marked, Saul became his enemy. 1 Samuel 16-18. From the day of the anointing, the hostility began. What David carried made him a target before it made him a king. The resistance wasn't proof he was wrong. It was proof he was marked. If the moment you committed to something significant, everything got harder, that's not bad luck. The opposition is the confirmation. Next, the sign that hurts the most because it involves people. Sign number 2. The people around you start to change. There comes a season where the friendships you expected to be permanent start to loosen. Not always because of conflict. Sometimes because of distance, in direction, in values, in where you're each headed. And it hurts in a very specific way, because you can't point to a reason. Nobody did anything wrong. People just no longer fit. A 2022 study in social psychology found that high achievers report 3 times higher rates of social friction during significant growth periods than during stagnant ones. The relationships that fracture when you start to change were never built for who you're becoming. This isn't abandonment. It's misalignment becoming visible. Psychologists call this social comparison threat. When one person in a peer group begins moving in a different direction, the group's equilibrium is disrupted. Others respond with friction, distance, or quiet disapproval, not always intentionally, just as a system restoring its balance. Joseph was thrown into a pit by his brothers, not enemies, family, the people closest to him. Genesis 37. His isolation wasn't abandonment, it was separation. Before Joseph could become what he was built to be, he had to be removed from the proximity of the people who couldn't go where he was going. Heaven isolates what it intends to elevate. If you're losing people right now, don't only ask what you're losing. Ask what space is being created for. After that, the sign that happens in private. And it's the hardest to talk about. Sign number 3. Your mind becomes your biggest battlefield. Your environment looks fine. No obvious crisis. But internally, something is loud, anxious, heavy. You reason with yourself. You tell yourself the right things, and the noise doesn't stop. You're not weak. you're targeted. Neuroscientist Dr. Rick Hansen found that the human brain processes negative input 5 times faster and retains it 5 times longer than positive input. And during high growth seasons, the brain's threat detection system goes into overdrive. The inner critic doesn't get louder because it's right. It gets louder because your brain is interpreting growth itself as a form of danger. The pattern runs like this. The bigger the next season, the louder the voice that says you're not ready. The closer you are to something significant, the harder it is to feel like you are. Elijah had just called fire down from heaven, the greatest public victory of his life. And immediately after, he fled into the wilderness and asked God to take his life. 1 Kings 19. Spiritual highs attract mental lows. God's response? He didn't rebuke Elijah. He fed him. He let him sleep. Then asked one question. What are you doing here? He addressed the body and mind before he addressed the mission. Your peace is not the absence of noise. It's the decision not to let the noise make your decisions. That's not a personality trait. It's a discipline, built exactly in seasons like the one you're in. Here's what you want to know next, because the 4th sign might be the one you've been staring at longest without knowing its name. Sign number 4. Everything you're working toward seems delayed. You did the work. You stayed consistent. You moved when you were supposed to move. And the result you were waiting for hasn't come. Not yet. The doors that should be open are closed. The timeline you built in your head doesn't match the calendar in front of you. And the longer the gap, the easier it is to wonder if you misread something. Psychologist Angela Duckworth's landmark research on grit found that the quality most predictive of exceptional long-term performance was not talent, not intelligence. It was the ability to persist through the period where results haven't appeared yet. In her study, the most significant careers averaged a 7 to 10-year gap between initial commitment and breakthrough. The delay is not evidence of failure. It is the structure of meaningful success. There is a critical distinction. Delay means the outcome is still in motion. Denial means it's off the table. Most men confuse the two and make permanent decisions based on temporary circumstances. Joseph was 17 when he received the dream. He was 30 when he stood before Pharaoh. 13 years. Betrayal, slavery, false accusation, forgotten in prison. And not once in those 13 years did the dream disappear. He just couldn't see the path. Genesis 37 to 41. The delay wasn't punishment. It was the biography of the man who would need that authority to carry what the dream required. Premature promotion would have destroyed what the preparation was building. If you're in the gap right now, between where you are and where you've sensed you're supposed to be, the gap is the work. The delay is the development. The 5th sign, and this one might be the most important evidence of all. Sign number 5, you can't quit, even when you want to. This is the one that doesn't make sense to the people around you. You've been through enough to justify walking away. You have every reasonable excuse, and part of you has genuinely wanted to quit, more than once. But something in you won't let it happen, not because you're stubborn, because something deeper than motivation is running. Dr. Martin Seligman's research on meaning versus happiness found that men who describe themselves as unable to abandon a pursuit, even when it's painful, report significantly higher life satisfaction at 60 and 70 than men who optimized for comfort in their earlier decades. The inability to quit is not a personality flaw. It is the psychological signature of a genuine calling. Motivation comes and goes. This doesn't. Psychologists call this intrinsic motivation, drive that comes from alignment with your core identity rather than external reward. You can't bribe it away. You can't reason your way out of it. Because the thing that keeps you going isn't in your head. It's in your design. Paul wrote 2 Corinthians 4:8 from prison. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. Not by a man who had it easy, by a man who had been beaten, shipwrecked, imprisoned, and abandoned, and was still writing letters that would outlive every empire that persecuted him. He didn't endure because endurance was comfortable. He endured because he had been built for it. If you can't quit, even though you've wanted to, that's not weakness dressed as persistence. That's purpose dressed as stubbornness. There's a difference, and you already know which one this is. 5 signs: resistance, isolation, the mental battle, the delay, the inability to quit. From the outside, those look like a man struggling. From the inside, they're the biography of a man being built. Not every difficult season is formative, but these 5, arriving together, sustaining across time, are the pattern that shows up in the story of every man who eventually became something that mattered. Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. The difference was intentional, not accidental. The struggle is not the contradiction of the calling. For men like this, it is the evidence of it. So if these 5 signs are showing up in your life, don't reduce them to bad luck. Don't call this season a mistake. Don't let the delay convince you the destination is gone. You're not falling apart. You're being built. And what gets built in seasons like this doesn't break easily. And if you're protecting the process, the next video is about what to protect inside it.